Hi everyone, I would like to share with you today a game from the young Peter Svidler, who was rated 2505, versus Vladimir P Maliniuk from St. Petersburg. Open round 5, 1994. Maliniuk, by the way, was rated 2595. And those of you interested in the Dutch defense, that is probably the number one practitioner of the Dutch defense, d4 f5, with the black pieces in the world for probably the last 30 years or so. But anyway, this game was not a Dutch. Peter Svidler opened up with e4. Maliniuk replied e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4. Now we have a Scotch game. E takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6. I like playing this variation for black because um, black develops pretty easily and gets active piece play and a nice central position. Now Svidler opted to play knight c3, which is not as popular or good in my opinion as the Mises variation at the knight takes c6 and b takes c6, e5, queen e7, and so on, which was brought back into relevance by the great Garry Kasparov. Knight c3 is a popular variation amongst club players and especially beginning players and young junior players, because white uh, gets a basically a perfect pawn structure to play with while he damages black's pawn structure somewhat, and it's pretty simple to play. So Svidler played knight c3, bishop b4, and this variation allows black to put a lot of pressure on the center and basically destroy white's pawn presence in the center, as you'll see. So the bishop now is pinning this knight. This pawn is in danger. Therefore, knight takes c6, b takes c6, and now bishop d3 to protect the pawn. And we can see this bishop, of course, is a little passive here. Who wants to use the pawn to, use the bishop to just protect the pawn. More pressure on the center, d5, and this is all well known. E takes d5, c takes d5 from Maliniuk. Both sides will castle, and there's different continuations at this point. Knight a4, knight e2 is played, bishop g5, and here bishop g5 was chosen by Svidler, one of the main lines, and of course you can see the idea of capturing this pawn, or black having its pawn structure damaged after bishop takes. For instance, if we just allow white a free move here, we can see the idea. Bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and then knight d5, or queen h5. So it's all bad news for black. So that's the idea after bishop g5. Thank goodness for the rules of chess that black can move also. So black normally plays c6. An old line that used to be played in the early 1900s is just bishop takes c3, which is good also. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but that's a good line also. You damage the white pawn structure. Only thing is that you give up the bishop here unprovoked and early in the game, but still there's no like real refutation to taking that knight. However, um, as this theory and this variation went on, c6 became the main move. So c6, defending against the threat we just spoke about. Svidler chooses knight a4, and like I said, there's different lines here. Queen f3, threatening the double pawns is one of them. Knight e2, this idea of going to f4, and also sometimes g3 to challenge this f5 square is an idea. Knight a4, one of the ideas behind this is to play c3 and then b4, basically fixing and holding up these pawns from advancing, and then looking forward to settling this knight down on the c5 square eventually after getting rid of this dark bishop. h6, very common in this line. I'm trying to get black to get white to declare his intentions with the bishop. Bishop h4, rook e8, just taking over the only open file, and c4. So here we see another idea from bringing the knight to a4 is to try to saddle black with the isolated pawn and then target that pawn for capture. And the isolated pawn is often double-edged, of course, as most of us know. If in this situation, if white can fix the isolated pawn, blockade it, and then attack it, then it can be a liability for black. But the benefit of the isolated pawn is that it is useful as an outpost. In fact, we'll go forward a couple of moves, and it controls important central squares. Bishop d6. Bishop comes back. C takes d5, C takes d5. So now we have an isolated pawn on board. So notice the benefits for black with the isolated pawn is that the c4 square is under control, and e4. Also, if this bishop wasn't here, of course, the knight would be able to jump into e4. And this is what I mean, that black can use this pawn, use these squares as outposts for his pieces, whether it's the knight, rook, bishop, what have you. Another benefit also is the control of the files next to the pawn here. The downside, of course, is that this pawn has no pawn protection, so it must be guarded by pieces. So that's the double-edged nature of the isolated pawns. But it's up to white to prove that this pawn is in fact a liability. Svidler played knight c3. Again, the threat to the pawn is quite quite real here. As we see, if we gave white an extra move, he could play moves like bishop b5, threatening the rook, and then let's say at the rook, e6, then simply knight takes d5 or something like that. Okay, now I played bishop b5 there because if you get too hasty here and say you play bishop takes f6, if the queen takes f6, knight d5, then black can play this move, queen takes b2. Alright, so that's why I inserted that move, bishop b5. But just to show you, illustrate the threat again against the c pawn. So back to the game. So after knight c3, Maliniuk played bishop e5. So this is one way of defending against the idea of bishop takes, because now the bishop will take back and the queen will still be defending this pawn. Well, here Svidler saw the opportunity for a combination, and with the move bishop e5, Maliniuk laid a subtle trap. If you want, you could pause the video and try to figure out what Svidler played here, or analyze the position and see what you would play if you were Peter Svidler. Alright, so there's your time, and now hopefully you did pause it and analyze it yourself. And now here's what happened. Peter Svidler played the move knight takes d5 with the idea, of course, that not only is this piece pinned, but simply after queen takes, right, he sees that, then he just merely takes with the bishop. Okay, and then once, let's just show the idea instead. So after queen takes, bishop takes, and let's say after bishop takes f6, then winning for Svidler would be bishop h7 with this discovered check on the queen after king takes h7 and queen takes d7. Excuse me, d5. Alright, that was the idea. So going back again after bishop e5, there's this subtle trap laid by Maliniuk. It's a provocative move because it leaves, it puts the combination out there. Instead of bishop e5, Maliniuk could have just played a move like rook b8, for instance, right? Just attacking this pawn here, and then say bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and knight d5. Again, that's not too good for a white. Okay, so he could have just played that. However, he plays this move and kind of sets a little trap for the young Svidler here. So knight takes d5 was played by Svidler. Queen takes d5. Bishop takes f6. And here, Maliniuk refutes the entire combination. And, I will leave it up to the viewers to find the refutation here. And, if you want, again, you can pause the video. But, I'll give you a couple of seconds. Well, it's a nice move. Alright, there's your time. Now, okay, so instead of this capture that Svidler probably, was thinking about or figured that Maliniuk couldn't make, Maliniuk just simply ignored that and played bishop b7, threatening mate on g2. It's refuted Peter Svidler's entire concept, beginning with knight d5. And there's no way to deal with the threat of mate and the simple threat of the loss in material here. Okay, so after bishop b7, Svidler just simply, let me save this. Svidler resigned here. 17 moves. So it happens to the best of us, and it just shows you that tactics are king in chess, and always try to work on your tactics. So for instance, just to show you like an example of some kind of defense here, let's say f3. It's simply just bishop takes f6, and he's down a piece. So there's no defense. So that probably surprised you guys out there. You figured, since I'm showing the game from Peter Svidler, and he's always like commentating and stuff, that he surely won the game. But actually, this time he's on a other end. And like I said, I just wanted to show you that game because it's a good game. It's fascinating to me when I saw it. And again, it just shows you that anybody can miss tactics, and even in these simple openings. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you on the next video.